technologically altered entities. We are technology. It's not technology is something alien to us, but language already is a technology. So that's why we are cyborgs. The cyborg is a cybernetic organism. And cybernetic comes from the ancient Greek. It means it comes from Kybernetes. Kybernetes is a helmsman, the steers person of the ship. So we are steered, we are technologically altered organisms. That's why I've sort of coined the phrase, we have always been cyborgs. So because language is connected to us being humans, that's always been the definition of, humankind. But instead of us developing language as a gift of our God coming from outside, coming by means of a divine spark, language is something which we have generated, we have developed as a consequence of cultural processes of parents upgrading us with language. And that's a radical, actually, that's a paradigm shift concerning the way we conceptualize ourselves. And so it's a way to rethink, to not start from the duality of the material and the material, but to rethink everything in the sense of everything is psychophysiology, where these two elements are always intrinsically connected.
Right. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm sort of picking up here with what you're explaining is consistent with like Eastern tradition's view of non-duality.
Exactly. This is exactly the case. It is very close to the traditional Eastern way of conceptualizing the world of non-duality. What you said is actually, I've used that. I've used the same words in a presentation sometime in South Korea, and I said, well, this is very much in tune with the Eastern way of thinking about, non-dualistic way of thinking about the world. And then I was corrected. Well, partially corrected at least, and I was informed that actually the majority of people nowadays in South Korea, for example, are Christians, and many of them are Catholics, and many of them are recently been converting from Catholicism to evangelical movements because Catholicism was not rigorous for them enough. But that aside, so when we think about Eastern Asian way, we still have that non-dualistic way of mind, thinking in mind, which is not actually the case in many of these countries. Sort of the Christian ways of thinking have become quite dominant, have become quite strong. But at least, of course, the traditional Eastern ways of thinking, they actually embody this non-dualistic way of thinking from Buddhism, Shintoism, Taoism. There, the non-dualistic elements is particularly strong, and it is still in tune. Actually, it is still even the way, even how Christianity is lived in many of the Eastern countries. Maybe has quite some strong resonances and influence from the traditional non-dualistic ways. I mean, if you go to many of the temples, I saw many temples who are dedicated to different religions at the same time, and for the believers that was not a problem. So you can believe in the one thing as well as in the other, and you can worship the same gods in the same church, in the same temple. And I think that's that's a very plausible way of approaching that for people. And I think, and I've got a friend, for example, who's a transhumanist in Germany, but he is also a professor of Catholic theology. So, and he sees there's not necessarily a conflict between being a Catholic theologian or being a Catholic and being a transhumanist. If you interpret that also in a weak manner, in the sense of, of course, you mustn't have the traditional understanding. There is the only good, which is outside, which is the immaterial, which is the God, which is far removed from this world. And then there's a material world, which is full of change. And there's a categorical duality between this. This is a way which is not in tune, obviously, with this the transhumanist, post-humanist way of thinking. However, this is not necessarily the case how to present, for example, Catholicism either. There are many Catholics. I mean, I've also had discussions with a Catholic who was a Catholic as well as a Buddhist priest. So one has to be careful of just identifying the religions always with a very specific stereotype. And all of the different traditions are much more multifaceted than how they are often being portrayed. And I think that's a central element of what I'm trying to show also with respect to the transhumanism. It's a transhumanism. They don't have to be the ones how they are often presented in the public media. The ones who think, we want to become immortal by means of mind uploading, or we want to become Superman on Viagra or Wonder Woman on Botox, and that's the goal of transhumanists. It is much more complex, and this is definitely, that might be shared by some transhumanists, but I don't find this way of dealing with transhumanism, this approach to transhumanism, a plausible one, and I've got, present loads of arguments why I find that quite problematic, actually. In the same way I find it mind uploading, I don't think that's a necessary part connected to transhumanism in the same way. I don't think personal immortality is something which we can make sense of. And none of these goals have to be associated with transhumanism. So, and it is extremely interesting, the question you've been alluding to, sort of concerning the connection between religiosity, technology, and transhumanism. Also concerning, there have been some wonderful studies concerning the possibility of having religious experiences by means of psychoactive substances. In the University of London, in the hospital, where it's not the case, obviously, that the psychoactive substances actually cause the religious experiences. If they cause them, then they would they wouldn't be religious experiences, because they would be based upon the drugs someone is taking. But it is something, they are questioning the possibility whether some substances like bodily practices like meditation can open up the possibility to realize, to have that one has the possibility of experiences, such religious experiences. So these are very interesting questions, and